And now, according to the Autism Society of Kenya, they do indicate that 1 in every 25 children suffer from autism. And yes, much as the previous month in April was the Autism Awareness Month, today we track the progress of creation of awareness of this condition, what exactly leads to autism, and what interventions have been made by various agencies. That is what forms base of our conversation. And for the same, I have created FaceTime with Peter Mucheru to my far right, I should say, who is a speech and language therapist and also special needs education consultant. And right next to him is Ndegwa, who's the father of a child with autism and also a caregiver. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just start with you, Peter. Very quickly, just help us understand what exactly is autism and what causes this.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Doreen.
Yeah.
My name is Peter Mucheru, a speech language therapist and also special needs consultant. Thank you. This is a good morning for us. Having come from the Autism Awareness Month.
Yeah.
So we are just wrapping it up in a style. So thank you very much. So when we ask about autism, autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder, meaning that it affects the brain. So it affects the brain of a child, the way the brain develops, so the child is not able to do much of the things that we'll consider to be very normal, that they are done by other children. So a child with autism will have a problem with interacting with the environment, will have a problem in communication, will have a challenge in social skills and social interaction and doing activities of daily living. So autism will generally affect many areas of the child's development. You asked about the causes of autism.
Yeah.
We don't have yet the results on the research because it's there are many theories that are trying to explain the causes of autism. One of them being genetic causes. And the researchers are still arguing about it because you realize that currently there are children with autism with the families not having any background about the same condition. But also you realize there are some families which have a child with autism, and the second and third child after birth they happened also to have autism. So those are some points of contention. So basically about the causes, it's something that is under research. Yes.
So basically from what you're saying is that where we sit right now, the year 2023, we really can't pinpoint what exactly causes autism. We can't link it to genetic, we can't link it to lifestyle. There's really no specificity.
There is no specificity.
As far as this condition is concerned.
Yeah, there is no specificity. It's not specific on what really is the cause of autism, because also there are some theories that are talking about the environmental factors, like there is what currently we are talking about, the virtual autism. Virtual autism, too much pre-exposure of a child at a very tender age to the screens. It's also being believed to be a cause of autism, which also it's not evidence-based, so nobody can attest to that. Now, the others are saying what the mothers are taking as family planning. There are so many theories around this, yes.
Well, it's quite interesting because, I mean, treating something that you really do not know the exact cause, I can't imagine it can be an uphill task.
Yes, sure.
Stephen, this has been your experience with your son for the past 13 years.
Yes.
Just tell me, when this happened, what was going through your mind? Had you ever heard about autism? Was it something new to you? Just what was this?
Yeah, I remember the boy is my third born. So the first two children were normal, and I really would not say that I was hands-on as such, because then there was the house girl, caregivers and all that.
Yes.
Then when I got now the third born, we saw that at 2 years, I found that he's not giving us eye contact. Just like that, you know, you're just there, When you're calling him, he's playing around, and then you're trying to, but you can see he's not giving you eye contact. So I told the mother, this could be autism. And it's like God prepares you for some things, because I read about autism somewhere, just fleetingly, and I saw autism, some of the signs. Either I think it was in my mind, so I just saw it, and then I read a bit about it. So when I saw this boy is not giving us eye contact, then I suspected, what is the problem? How come he's not giving, I mean, he's avoiding consciously, you see? And he's just over 2 years old. So ultimately now he started exhibiting the other symptoms of autism, being hyper, not being able to sleep properly. You can see he still had some delayed milestones. Other kids are doing some things, and then by 3 years he was not having speech, and you can see other kids are having speech and so forth. So we saw, no, this has to. So we took him to various doctors. He did so many tests, ear tests to see whether he's hearing, and blood tests, neurological tests. But ultimately, we were told your son is autistic. And
this is after how long?
Let's say at 3 years. It's when now we were
saying in terms of the series of tests.
Yes.
Because you realize that the more you keep taking time, the further the condition continues to worsen. Yes. So at 2 years, then you start realizing this signs that you're telling us.
Yes.
Then you begin taking him to different specialists. So by the time he was diagnosed with autism, it was after how long?
I think it took us about, let's say, a stretch of a year.
Just for the diagnosis to be
Yes, well, because you're not taking him daily, you're taking him after a month, you take him for this. Then this doctor continues, says, okay, go and take him for this other test. Then you stay for a bit, then these other tests, So in the meantime, you're still in denial, because you're like, okay, other kids don't have to have speech, And I remember, like, when I was growing up, I had also issues with speech. I stammered for some time, and I was hyper and all that. So I could see, according to what I was told by my mother when I was young, and my parents in general, when I was young, I had some traits, that were not normal. And so when I saw the same traits in my son, then I said, these are genetics now playing. But only that now was severe, He could speak. When I could stammer him, he can't speak at all. Even though he still doesn't have speech. He can't write, he can't coordinate a few things. So it took us some time, either through denial or just the trial and error thing, until now we said, okay, now he's autistic. And by that time, after 3 years, is when now it became haywire. I think when now it was official that he has, the journey started, and it was quite, a rough ride.
And we'll come to that journey, because also you're telling us that at 13, even now, he can't speak.
Yes.
He can, write. So, and this is actually the formative ages of any person at your teens, where a lot of activities would take place for any person.
Absolutely.
So I'd also want you to tell us, how that experience looks like. But then, Peter, you'll just listen to what Stephen is saying, and you realize also there's a case of late diagnosis. So then from your practice and from where you see, do you feel that there's also not so much insight and knowledge even from practitioners? Because, taking you a whole year to diagnose a condition to which, just as Stephen is saying, there were some pinpointers. It could be autism. Not quite sure, but it could be. But a whole year to diagnose this condition, what do you read from this?
I think in Kenya there is a challenge in late diagnosis, because many of the clients or many of the children that come to us, they come to us late, from 3 years.
Even from me as a speech therapist.
Yes, from 3 years and above. But for autism mainly, it's also difficult to diagnose it early. But as he says, you can see the red flags. One thing I tell my parents is that always trust your conscience. Whenever you see you are not sure about something, but you've seen something in your child, please take action immediately. Don't wait. As you say, there is a big challenge even in the medical fraternity, because even the pediatrician who are supposed to take care of these children don't even know what autism is all about. So they keep on telling them, kindly wait, the child will talk. They will talk after, they will talk. Let's take them to, let's do this. Just go home and wait. So there is that challenge of wait and see that is also causing a big problem. I thank him because he was able to realize that too, But again, taking a whole year for diagnosis to be given, it was a bit of long time. But that's basically the average time that it takes here in Kenya, because he'll be sent from one specialist to the other, starting from before he learns. He'll start maybe with his pediatrician, a general practitioner, who will also tell them to wait. And as they wait, the time is approaching for school. Many of them got fears that I don't want to take my child back to school, because also many schools are not accepting them because they have not achieved the basic life skills, like taking themselves to the potty, right? So as they continue also looking forward, where are we going to get the schools, where are we going to get the specialists, then time is still moving. After they go maybe for before they get, maybe along the way they meet someone who can refer them to someone. Also, when they go to that someone, maybe a specialist who can also be able to diagnose, the queue is also very huge. So they are given several months to wait for the appointment to be seen. And when they are seen, there is also a series of tests that must be done by specific doctors or specific people. So that's why maybe it takes a little bit longer in Kenya just to diagnose what autism is. Yes.
So by this time, a year is done, almost a year and a half, almost 2 years even for some.
Sure.
Some would even go beyond 2 years.
Yes.
But there's something that you did say, and I want you to elucidate a bit on that, that even some pediatricians don't have knowledge of this. They don't really know exactly what this is, autism. That's something that they will tell you, just wait a bit. After 3 years, 4 years, they'll begin speaking, and they'll even give you a series of examples of different children here and there, but this is a different case you're dealing with. What would you attribute this to, the lack of insight? Because much as it will take a bit of time because of taking to specialist X, Y, and Z, but by the time you get to this specialist, they need to, just by observing also, they need to be able to tell you firsthand, this is it, so then you can begin taking precaution if need be, or you can begin treatment if need be. But you go there after this 2 years and they tell you, just wait a bit. So you can imagine if you've already taken 2 years to reach this person, you finally get to this person and they tell you, no, just begin speaking. So again, you waste another year, another 2 years waiting. What would you attribute this to, the lack of this insight? Is it they're not being taught this in med school? What exactly is this? How can we arrest this situation?
Sure. I think autism is a dynamic condition, and it's unfolding slowly. We are very happy that it's unfolding. So knowledge is getting out. When you see kind of film, they are really making noise about autism. Knowledge about autism is going out. I held a seminar, I think somewhere, is it last year, June, with the pediatricians in Nakuru. It's the same challenge. Most of them didn't even know that speech therapists exist. Yes, they didn't know that speech therapists exist, and they didn't know what a who is a speech therapist. So it was an interactive session with them, and I really got to know that many of them lack that knowledge. Mainly because autism is a new phenomenon in Kenya. Some of them were trained, if you look and see many of the pediatricians are very old doctors, true or false?
So that could also be the reason.
Could be. When they were training, this was not a condition then that was given any attention.
As is now.
Yes, as it is being given now. So as they continue treating, maybe that's why we are told to continue doing what we call continuous professional developments. So maybe we also need to ask from KMPDU if they still follow up on the emerging issues, so that we can be able to give our client, the society, we can be able to address their needs at this time and era. Because at 2023, us saying that we can't understand about autism and it's too much on the field, I guess there is a big problem. Number two is that many of them, even if they know autism, they don't know what to do with it.
That's also a challenge.
That's also a challenge. I know now, like in Nairobi, we have a few who are neurodevelopmental pediatricians. Those are specifically trained to deal with the child and the way they develop. I think we have one at Aga Khan, we have another one at Gertrude's, and also Dr. Omondi in Kenyatta National Hospital. Those are the majorly places where children are taken to. And before they are taken to these places, the whole process before, get to know that I can go to Aga Khan and get this help or to this and get this help, these parents, they walk a lot, walking to their doctor's back. Okay. Some are given even medication just to suppress the hyperactivity, which is I think it's a wrong procedure of the treatment of autism.
I hear you.
Yes.
And that's what I mean, you are here also just for you as Stephen,
yes,
because you also are a member of an organization that does a lot of awareness creation, you know, for this condition. But even as you tie that to now your story, I mean, at 13 years, your son cannot be able to do what would be termed as very basic, like writing, like the speech,
reading,
you know, reading and speak. This, how do you handle this? I mean, schools learning,
I think the first thing is acceptance, because I will not beat the doctor so much, because even when you go to look at the research in the West, it is still unfolding. There's a lot of knowledge that is still, there's a lot of trial and error. Research.
You can't really tell whether it's genetic, it's hereditary, is it lifestyle?
It's difficult to put, and it's so vast, you know, and that's why it's called attention deficit, you know, hyperactivity disorder, because it manifests differently in different children. Now, for my son, for example,
it's never static. Like, this is actually how it does.
No.
Different children, different persons, different phenomena.
If you meet 5 children with autism, those are 5 individuals.
And
so
then,
treat them differently.
And then you'll get dyslexia. There's those who have, like Down syndrome. It's a whole spectrum. So getting now to when they say your son has Down syndrome, and then has dyslexia, and then has autism, they behave almost like in the same sphere, but they are different. They have different needs, neurological needs.
Yes.
So it's emerging, yes, and the doctors here, even in us now, as you can see, I was one of the pioneers of the Differently Talented Society of Kenya, which brings together parents especially and caregivers of children with autism. So we just share ideas. And the way Peter has said, some things now we have ruled out, things like giving these children medication, that is wrong, you know. There are other ways of intervention, like using diet is especially very important. That is how you start. They say, for example, kids with autism have compromised gut. So avoid giving them things that seep into the system because they're not digested. Things like sugar, especially processed sugar, things like gluten, which is found in wheat and products, and preservatives in certain foods and so forth. When they seep into the blood, they are not processed by the system. So they seep into the system, they go to the brain, and they trigger a lot of hyperactivity. So we have learned ourselves at home to live by the day in terms of now taking care of him. We took him to a school and for about 4 years, but we saw that the school, because it was not a special school, we have avoided taking him to a special school, but ultimately now, because he's 13 and is growing up to be a small man, we may need now to also push him out and take him to a school, even if it's special, yes, but where now they have a lot of activities that, because all we need for him now to do is to take care of himself. Yes. Because we have trained him to like brush, but he still cannot brush like, a boy his age, brush properly. He just take the brush and pass it on his teeth. Yeah. But when you now want his teeth to be clean, you'll have now to give it that thrust, you see. Yes. If it's things like showering, he has the concept, he'll take the shower, the shower funnel and try to, but he won't like scrub himself all over. So someone has to be there to do it for him, you see. So it's a challenge, but again, I think, as I said, acceptance is the first thing. Once you accept that condition, that he has neurological challenges like, that need special attention, you start from there. And then you start now molding him to taking care of himself. So it's a journey. They say autism is a journey. It is, because even those who are there, you'll find people telling you, my son is 30 years. And they say that, yesterday we had visitors, and the man, a 30-year-old man, the mother is over 40, he's like 50. But she said, my son now, he came from upstairs, bang, naked, So you can see he's 30, but you never know how he reacts at any particular moment. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge. There are those who are high functioning. They can move from one point to the other. They can take a matatu, for example, and come to town and go back home. But like my son at his age, you cannot even leave his hand in public. You cannot dare, because he'll either jump to the road or he'll just, take flight, things like those. Yeah. So it is a spectrum that manifests differently. Okay. And the best thing for parents is to get into these different organizations that are there. Yes. And in Kenya, I think what I've said, the Different Talent Society of Kenya has many members, and that is a good starting point.
I hear you.
Yes, then you hear people talk about their experiences, you network with parents who will take, no, don't take your kids to this doctor because he gives medication for epilepsy and for other neurological disorders.
I hear you.
And then people will talk about diet, they'll take, and so recommendations is the way to go right now. As we also hope that research will come up and tell us exactly what are the maybe surefire ways of curbing the condition.
Well said, I hear you. Yes. And we have about 5 minutes to exit this space. Yes. And Peter, I'll give you the last word on recommendations, also from your practice as a speech therapist. But before then, Steve, you have Heart for Men, and bringing more men on board as far as managing this condition is concerned. Just talk to me about that and the initiative that you have for this, and why specifically bringing more men on board to help even the women, or to even just help their children with dealing with this autism.
I think, thank you. I think for men, they have been lambasted, across the board, not just because of autism, but poor parenting skills for men, But nowadays, I find a lot of men actually taking care of kids. You see them in town holding children, helping their mothers, and their wives and so forth with the kids. So it needs to be a culture that is more, especially special needs kids. I was a judge for a recent competition called Baba na Mama Autism, where we were gifting parents of children who take care of autism, the mothers and the fathers. And you find that out of all the contestants, there were only 2 men. And one was a sibling, the other was a father who was co-parenting with the mother. So there were no fathers who came to support that. And I think it's a high time that fathers maybe there's going to be, because if I was not present in my child's, upbringing, I think half of what he has achieved will not be achievable. And it's not even just finances, but finances are critical. They're very critical because it's very expensive to take care of children with autism. But just that presence of making sure that you are there to see the milestones, to push things, when they need to be pushed and so forth. So I would request other men to really come out and let us support our women, let's support mothers to bring up, special needs children, because as it is a very huge task, and just for the sake of the kids, if nothing else, for the sake of these children.
And I feel like we need to have a different forum to just discuss the treatment options and the cost of treatment for this condition, but now we are strained for time and really can't quite do that. Perhaps we need to get another session for that. But then as we wrap up, Peter, recommendations, listening to just also borrowing from Steve's story and from your practice, what you've gathered, what is this that perhaps you could tell parents, for instance, caregivers, guardians, who this is their daily practice?
Number 1 is just to appreciate them for the work that they are doing. Number 2, I will tell them, let's start early. Early intervention is key. And number 3, let's try to start it early and start it right. Maybe, do we know whom we need to start with? They get into therapists. Therapists do very well. We start with occupation therapists very early. We do speech therapy. Therapists do work. We have so many cases that have recovered with time. Also, they get a good school. I know they do assessment at Kenya Institute of Special Needs Education, but again, I sometimes question because they are told to go to a regular school. Let them also ask several questions when they are given such recommendation. When we take our child to a regular school, which support do they need? So the parents need to be informed. Also, as he says in their forums, let them also sit back and think, and also go through the reports that we give as practitioners, so that to see and know if it worked with another child, what do they exactly need, so that they don't keep on beating around the bush. Because many parents, like now he's saying, there are those with children who are 30 years and above. I know there are those who are being diagnosed today. we don't need to do the same mistake again today that was done 30 years ago. So we need to, in our support group, we really talk and mentor the young parents who are being diagnosed. Yeah.
And I mean, just when I hear you say that, just orients my mind to really think of the many questions that we really perhaps could converse around this issue, because you realize there's quite a lot. You can imagine someone being diagnosed at the age of 30.
Yeah.
They've lived 30 years only for you to realize all this while this was autism. I mean, what are some of those missing links and loopholes for this to have happened? But I believe we need to have another session for, for just to interrogate more further on this issue of autism. Nonetheless, that's all the time we had for this particular conversation. And I do highly appreciate your time and valuable inputs into the same.
Thank you very much.
Asante sana. I'll be speaking to Peter Mucheru, to my far right, who's a speech and language therapist, also a special needs education consultant. And right next to him is Stephen Ndegwa, father of a child with autism and also a caregiver. Definitely what has formed center of this discussion is looking at autism and where we are as a country as far as treatment, management and diagnosis of this condition is concerned. Good place to end this particular conversation, but we still have something else after this break. We'll look at the steel industry and how this aids to the manufacturing sector. That coming away after this breather. Don't go anywhere.